Thanks everyone for joining our webinar today. You can see our topic here is how to protect your company for cyber attacks. It's something that we see pretty frequently in the news and has come up to a lot of our attention recently. So a topic I'm personally very interested in learning about. I'll introduce myself. I'm the facilitator for the session today. My name is Tom Wadelton. I'm one of the virtual CFOs here at Summit CPA Group. So I work with the Summit clients and do consulting from a financial nature, CFO services, controllership services, a lot of work with forecasting and strategic direction for those clients. So a little bit of housekeeping for today. This is a 1-hour session. We do need people to attend the whole session, and we do have 3 polling questions, one of which I'll be launching pretty soon. If you meet those requirements, we're going to send out the CPA certificate in the next week or so. We do have a Q&A function. And so if people would use that, that is the best way to interact with us today. I'll be monitoring that and get as many of those questions answered during the session as we can. And I'll already let you know, probably the most common question we get is, can I get a copy of the slides? And so you'll see here, I'll address that now. We will go ahead and send out a replay of the video that will be available, and then also an email tomorrow, so people will get copies of the slides. So hopefully these are things that you really want to see and look at in the future, and you'll have those available to you. So let me tell you just a little bit about Summit CPA Group, since I mentioned that that's where I work. Our company started 20 years ago, and since 2004, we've been offering CFO and back office services to our clients. In 2013, we went to a fully distributed firm, so our employees are across the nation, a few of them outside the US, and we also have clients across the US and then some outside there. And somewhat recently, and as of now, Summit CPA Group joined with Anders, and so we are now a division of Anders CPA and Advisors, and we're very excited about that change that's happened recently. So let me tell you a little bit about our presenter today. Jason Gotway is the Principal and Director of Technology at Anders CPA and Advisors. So he's been evangelizing about cybersecurity for about the past 5 years, and so we're excited that he'll be sharing that with us today. The technology group that he leads specifically supports and provides cybersecurity for between 5,000 and 10,000 computers over hundreds of businesses on a daily basis. So he's evangelizing it and living it. Jason started at a Fortune 20 company that also let him know that he doesn't want to work at a Fortune 500 company. Jason, I found I have that also in common. I started a Fortune 100 company and took longer than you to make that decision, but decided not to kind of give up the corporate world. So if you want to go ahead and tell us the agenda and how we're going to work through today's presentation.
Sure. Yeah, so I have a small agenda here, and we'll go through it pretty quickly and have plenty of time for questions throughout. So I like to establish some governance in cybersecurity about what organizations need, what people need to do, and not just say we have to buy all these products and services and do these tasks. I like to have a good, solid foundation behind recommendations and whatnot. Secondly, firewall, network, and account security and the subcategories explained in a hopefully a not too technical methodology for everyone to kind of grasp, the things that are required in modern times for appropriate cybersecurity, and finally finish that up with tests and assessments.
Good. I think I'll kick us off with the first polling question while you continue with that, Jason.
Be great.
Okay. So you should be able to go ahead and go.
Okay, there we go. So I got into an argument the other day with an auditor about one of the audits we were doing, and I'm like, well, says who? And then finally she said the AICPA. I'm like, okay, you're speaking my language now. So I work in cybersecurity every day, and I like to get my intelligence feeds and the governance from things like the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And if I'm working in, say, a specific industry, I'll use the FFIEC for banking. So I'm constantly looking for governances. So I'm not, randomly selecting initiatives for policies like, passwords, or what services I need to purchase to acquire, or say establish appropriate cybersecurity for organizations. So that governance I stick to very, very strongly, and leading, an organization that provides services for hundreds of businesses and thousands of computers and servers. That is really critical, that we have very specific services that provide cybersecurity. So I can't have, well, these 14 things will accomplish cybersecurity for you. I want to keep the list small to where we maintain productivity and have appropriate cybersecurity, and not things that might work for cybersecurity, but the ones that are proven to do so. And I like to establish governance for that. See the poll question going. That's great. So one of the first things that, and everyone's probably heard the term firewall before, and it's such a big deal for organizations. I think even some households are getting firewall, functions built into their home routers. And there are pieces in there that just protect people's information from the outside world and organizations. And the things that go on in a firewall in this bullet list here, I'll go through a little bit of them, but are mission critical. So some organizations kind of fight me back and say, well, I don't need that nice Cisco firewall or whatever brand it is put in my environment because all of our stuff's in the cloud. And I do get that argument a little more frequently now. But my objective is to protect company workloads and also protect organizations if they have a larger cluster of people. So if it's 6 employees or more, really, we want to establish policy that goes overarching over those employees to dictate what is safely navigated within the bounds of the organization. So if there's a firewall there and we don't want people checking their Gmail and clicking on malicious links that may come from Gmail, then okay, we can establish that policy at the firewall level. Also, firewalls generate alerts. So at Anders, whenever any of our clients have alert pop up on their firewall, it goes to our service tickets. So our employees can check and see what was that alert about that was generated by that firewall, and we can check it out and see if it's something that we need to investigate further. Also, these other functions are my favorite one is geographic IP blocking. I don't want to discount intrusion prevention, because if a hacker is knocking on the door repeatedly, that's what intrusion prevention does. It prevents someone from attacking. But also the geographic IP blocking is one that I share with a lot of organizations, because if an organization does not do business with Russia or China or Iran or Iraq or whatever, pick a country in the world, if you don't do business with them and there's really no reason to be interacting, turn that function on. Let's block that, so there's no ability for that large portion of a population to engage with your organization for any reason. Block.
Interesting.
The last
Jason,
very technical. Go ahead.
On that point, is it easy for someone to act like they're from a different country?
It is more
to
possible now through VPNs, and I think generally the population's becoming more aware with recent world events that are like, oh, a VPN allows me to appear like I'm from the United States, or I'm appear from like this country. Or Major League Baseball and the blackouts. We have the problem here in St. Louis where they recognize where you're from. If you don't have Bally Sports to watch the Cardinals game, it is easy to make it look like you're from a different location, so you can kind of sidestep the blackouts. I've heard of people doing this. So
possible.
Yeah, it is possible, to answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah. Still good practice in my opinion. And I will remove this whenever I feel like it's no longer a justifiable methodology for firewalls. Good question. So going a little bit further and on the firewall thing, I mentioned, you can block Gmail. Like if an IT person, established policy and blocked employees from being able to check their Gmail during the day, you can do that at the firewall level, but it's not going to make you any friends. So it's not going to be a popular decision, maybe. But if you put yourself in the leadership of the company in that position and say, we spend $1 gazillion on a spam filter for our company email, and we're allowing any type of malicious content to come through in Gmail, and we click on a link that came through there, then all of that money is somewhat sidestepped, kind of wasted if we allow other things to come through that aren't through our company sanctioned software and services. Same thing applies to things like Dropbox, or just really any service in general that's not company sanctioned. Firewall stops those, has the ability to stop those if it's set up. Next, this one is network security. So this is really one of the things I see smaller organizations struggle with, is getting an inventory of all the network assets. And kind of like whenever I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to go be a doctor, and I got accepted to SLU. I'm like, I'm going to go do this. I think I can wrap my mind around the human body and all the functions, interactions of it, and I can proceed with making a career out of this. I decided not to do that. I didn't think I could stand 10 years of school or whatever it is. But if I back up a step, I went into IT. You know, it's difficult. Got my degree at SIUE. I got my head wrapped around, you know, a few specific functions of IT. If you look at your organization the same way, like inventory all of the network assets, wrap your mind around everything that's going on inside of your company that can connect to a network, then you're one step there. Okay, I know about the thermostat that can connect to the internet. I know my security cameras that can connect to the internet. I know about all these little devices that, you know, you really don't associate with a computer or a server. All these little functions connecting to a network, all of these assets that have to be protected. Hackers can get into equipment on a manufacturing floor. Hackers can get into security cameras. Hackers can get into all of these things. So wrapping your mind around all of the things that are going on in a network, that's why that inventory list of everything is so incredibly important. And that's not mentioning servers and workstations. Like those are perhaps a little easier because you can have antivirus put on those. You can have your Windows updates set to go automatically. All of those things have these predefined functions where they're a little more easily manageable. You may have to go out and look at your security cameras, their website or their manufacturer, to install firmware or an update of some sort, and apply that to all of the things that you look at whenever you're looking at an asset inventory list. So hackers, they're getting creative. They're attacking different things on a network nowadays. Even your iPhone, you know, mine, I just looked at mine before we got on this meeting. It's on version 15.5. There's some huge security features coming out in version 16 of the iOS update. Looking forward to that. But all of these things just require updates all the time. And I hope nobody here is using Windows 7. That one is no longer supported. Windows Server 2008 no longer supported. All the workstations and servers have to be updated on a good management plan for receiving their updates. I was really impressed. The last company I went out and did an assessment for only had one update missing. It was a failed update, and it's the first time I think I've seen an organization really only missing one update.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Jason, you mentioned the iPhone. Someone made a comment that said, hey, with smartphones, people should be able to check their personal mail on that. And the company saying you can't use it on company equipment shouldn't be that big of a deal. Has that been your experience, or is that kind of one of the arguments that you suggest companies would use?
Well, it's a good thing about firewalls is there's different paths you can take to get out to the internet. Now, if your company sanctions a path, a separate mobile network that allows Gmail to route out, then yes, you know, that's perfectly acceptable. I got into it was a big financial institution the other day. Me and some of the employees were discussing this, and I shared that same sentiment, that if you have a mobile network that doesn't touch company resources, that doesn't, you know, provide a threat or vulnerability, then that's the way to do it.
Okay, good.
Kind of sub level, you know, you have your Windows computer, and then all the software you install, like Adobe, Google Chrome, Java, all of these things that, you know, make life a little easier on your Windows computer, or for that matter, your Mac. Like right now, if I open my Google Chrome, or if I do tonight or whenever, at some point, I'm going to open that, and there's going to be a little update box that says, it's right up near the X, and it's going to say that, hey, your browser needs an update, and I need to run the update. So I will. It's kind of a little example here, a third-party update, but things like Adobe Reader and a good handful of others also need updates, just like computers, for adequate security on a network. To discuss wireless just a little bit further. So this is a sticking point on a lot of assessments. So wireless, my phone's connected to it right now. I go home, my computer's connected to it. At an organization, there are other guest networks where you can have other activity, that doesn't have access to company resources like servers or network drives. So I use the example of a terminated employee. Say company XYZ has let go of someone on bad terms, and it's not good. And they have a wireless network where all the employees in the organization know the password. And if that exiting employee procedures are not in place to change the Wi-Fi password after an employee leaves, then the wireless network may be broadcasting outside the walls of that organization. Maybe it goes to the parking lot, where that employee who was upset, pulls back in the parking lot. It's like, I'm going to do some damage here to their network computers or their files. That's why I really want passwords and user credentials to be associated with that person. So whenever, for connecting to wireless, whenever that situation may occur and the exiting employee procedures turn off the user account, that can be established and performed quickly.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's slide 11, I believe, and it's the first time I'm going to say ransomware, if I'm not mistaken. So many organizations, unfortunately, have been affected by ransomware. It's really, they're really sophisticated at the hackers are performing campaigns where they can attack a lot of organizations, and unfortunately, a lot of them are successful. So having like an excellent backup system in place is critical. Anders technology, we guard this very heavily. So whenever a backup fails, or there's an error, or there's a warning, it's hitting our boards and telling us, hey, there's a situation at this company that they're having issues with their backups. And maybe even one little bit more expensive piece of software that we used says, we expected a backup to occur and it didn't. We recognized we were expecting an alert, a success alert, and it didn't happen. Something's wrong with that system. Okay, we have to go hunt that down as well. But we need something constantly to tell us that backups are functional, because whenever ransomware, perhaps hits an organization, that we need the most recent copy of the backup, and hopefully the data is not that old, not 24 hours old. We don't want old data having to restore from. So we use backup systems that are telling us constantly that things are successful or we have to fix them, but also ones that hackers can't touch if they do get into a system. So backup systems, if you have one where there's a little external hard drive sitting on a desk and you're using Windows backup, or maybe one of the more traditional systems like Veeam, or take your pick. There's a bunch of software vendors out there that still use something that points backups to an external hard drive that's probably sitting on a desk or sitting in a server room. Well, in some of the attacks that I've seen, organizations call me out of the blue and say, can you come help me? I have ransomware. Whenever I take a look at it, I do see one of those little external hard drives sitting there, and a hacker has also encrypted the information that's their backup. They've encrypted their backups also. So they have nothing to restore from unless they had something saved that wasn't connected to the network. So the point is that some modern services also push a backup copy to the cloud, which makes it more difficult through a service, makes it more difficult for a hacker to encrypt backups. But I would say the organizations that are still using a little external hard drive on a desk, or even a big external hard drive connected to a server where backups are being stored, are in pretty grave danger because ransomware is so prevalent and it's so easy to access backups that are saved on an external hard drive. Also, disaster recovery plans and incident response plans. Most often I see organizations that are using them to provide to their insurance provider to say, we have these plans in place in case something happens, and we're going to follow them. If we have ransomware, we have some sort of incident, then we're going to use our plans. And sometimes they're never touched after that. You may go till your next year till you have to renegotiate with your insurance company to tell them, hey, we're doing these things, and they'll ask, can you attest to it? Can you tell us that you have a disaster recovery plan? The plans shouldn't be that way. They should be a living, breathing document that kind of update as your systems update. If you make changes in your network or changes in vendors, that document kind of has to be front and center, to where you still know the vendors to call if an incident happens. So you're not disorganized in a response plan.
Hey, Jason, someone had a comment. So you mentioned the cloud-based backup. They said, what do you suggest short of doing a cloud-based backup? Can you go through that again, what you do recommend instead of a network connected backup device?
Yeah, I can tell you what people adopt most often. So clearly, if you have some sort of service that's connecting to the cloud, there's going to be, costs associated with that. So I do know that some organizations that don't want to incur that extra cost of pumping a backup copy to the cloud, they will use a series of hard drives and plug one in whenever it's full or on a rotation. They will unplug it. They're USB drives. They'll unplug it, and they'll have a backup copy that isn't touchable by the network. It's physically not plugged in. I don't like that plan, but it is a way around it. I just feel bad for the person who has to manage that on a daily basis. Oh, backups ran last night. I have to switch my hard drive out now.
Yeah, that does rely on a person doing it correctly, right? They've got to make sure to disconnect. You hope they didn't forget the day that the hacker or the person comes in.
True. It's the key word is immutable. If you see that word where it's like read only, once it's at that stage in the cloud, it's read only, and a hacker can't make any changes to your backups. That's the key word you're looking for if you do subscribe to services for backups in the cloud.
Okay, good.
All right. Passwords policies are a huge deal. Multi-factor authentication is number one. We have to do that. Your insurance companies probably already asked for it if you have a cyber policy, which we recommend cyber insurance. But the password policy, I think a lot of times you're going to see organizations or governances even avoid the number of characters. They're going to recommend multi-factor authentication, but they may not say to change your password anymore. They may say 8 characters at minimum. They may not say complexity. And the ones that I really zero in on are multi-factor authentication for accounts and lockout after failed attempts. So a DoD contractor once contacted me and said, hey, our domain, our main account that allows us to administer the whole network keeps getting locked out, and I just can't figure out why. And I was like, oh no, I know exactly what's wrong. I've seen it before. But that little policy piece, lockout after failed attempts, I recommend that for your network. I recommend it for Office 365 because the symptoms that a locked out account can produce can tell you, hey, we have an issue here where someone may be trying to attack us through a brute force attack from just trying passwords over and over again.
Okay.
Next is the VPNs, the only remote access. I like all networks to be nice and tidy. And if there's a VPN is the only remote access, and I don't have to worry about other software or services like LogMeIn is really popular, TeamViewer is very popular. I would prefer to block those other remote access tools through a firewall and make sure VPN is the only methodology for connecting to a network. Now, some of the more in-depth cybersecurity insurance attestations, whenever they make requests or ask if you're performing these things, they'll ask you if VPN is the only outside connection to a network. And also that has to absolutely be protected by multi-factor authentication, just like email or any other company workload that's accessible from the outside needs to have MFA turned on.
Okay. Jason, do you want to say anything about people having personal VPN when they're at a Starbucks, airport, things like that? Any kind of recommendation? I know it all feels very safe when you're like, oh, the airport has a wireless connection.
I don't connect any public Wi-Fi. I mean, none. So there may be organizations like we have St. Louis Bread Company, St. Louis Bread Co. we call it. I don't know how distributed those are. The names are a little different. I think they're called Panera outside of St. Louis.
Oh, okay, sure.
I don't know, but those I can see the firewall, or I'm not sorry, I see the wireless access on the point in the ceiling, and I know that particular device has more security built in. But I'm an IT nerd. Of course I know that, but you know, whenever you're looking at like Starbucks or St. Louis Community, or I'm sorry, St. Louis Bread Company, those have kind of thought security through more than maybe Joe's coffee shop on the corner. And if Joe's coffee shop is full of people and one of them in there is a hacker, and whenever you connected to the Wi-Fi and you received a little message, maybe that popped up and said, whatever you do can be seen by others here. That's terrifying to me. So then that's whenever I would use a VPN, probably to mask information. It's a little more secure.
Okay.
But in general, I just do not connect to Wi-Fi that is open and to the public. I use the hotspot on my phone.
Okay. Okay, good.
Also, this one's a little more interesting. So a lot of times, like I said earlier, I get called for incident response. Organizations I've never heard of call me from out of the blue and say, I have ransomware, or this is what happened, help. So whenever I show up, kind of take an evaluation of the situation, evaluate what's going on. And one of the tasks going through that process is to contain, figure out where the hacker got in, and many things on a list of things to do to make sure that, you know, if an organization has a system information and event manager or logging turned on, verbose logging, to where I can kind of look at timestamps and track the hacker's methodology whenever they first got into the network, exactly what they did. I can see what information they accessed. That information is critical to me to find out what happened, and also what's applicable by law in the state about what needs to be disclosed. All of those things are critical to me for multiple reasons. So I encourage logging and a system information and event manager to collect information from firewalls and servers, basically for a ton of forensics. But these functions also have the ability to alert you. So if you have something locking out an account like 5 times in a row, the system information event manager, it should prompt you and be like, is it okay that this person was locked out 5 times? Maybe the answer is no. So you're like, okay, we need to change that person's password. Something is going on here, and keep a good eye on them. These event managers are great for providing that type of information. Also, if anyone here, if use software like Sage, it has a SQL in the back end. It's where it's keeping information. That all those have to be on a supported version. There are vulnerabilities in the older versions that are not supported anymore. Also, if your organization has 5, 10, 20 servers, but whenever you walk in the server room and there's only one black box there, I'm probably doing virtualization. So all of those virtualization platforms, VMware's the market leader, Hyper-V is Microsoft's brand of it, but all of those components, that is in the inventory of the organization also have to be updated.
Okay.
So this is I think there's another poll question on this one, but cybersecurity training is a very big deal. So if you have 100 employees and you have 4 people that are just clicking on everything and you're tired of it, and you like to get that number down to 3, 2, or 1, or 0, you can constantly train them with phishing simulation. If they fail the phishing simulation, something that looks like a malicious email but it's actually test, you can keep pumping in that cybersecurity awareness training until they catch on that, hey, this is not a good email. I'm not going to click on this, both in the real world for testing, but also, or I'm sorry, both in the real world if they actually do receive a malicious email, but also in a testing scenario where they don't have to take as much training for not clicking on something that they should have been clicking on in the first place.
And Jason, you can tell me what you think of our approach. About a year ago, we started where we do the fake phishing, and you can report it through Outlook, and it will actually pop up and tell you if this was a company generated one or another one. But a couple of things they did, so then we would hear from Jake, our technology director, okay, we did this many phishing attacks and we had one person click on it, and they would keep track of multiple times. So there was sort of the stick part of, if you kept clicking, there was more intense conversations about, okay, let's do more training. There was also a reward we did, though, that as people clicked and reported them, they were entered in a raffle. Like once a month, we were giving away like an Amazon gift card or something like that. And to me, I heard more people talking about that part of, I used to ignore it and just delete it. And now I'm actually clicking on it because there's a reward there. So people seem to be looking a little bit more carefully. And there was also some training in an all-team meeting of, okay, show it and kind of here are the things you would look for that would tell you this is probably not a real email that you're getting.
Yeah. I'm very pro reward system. There's a ton of services out there that provide the phishing simulation, and if you report it to your IT group, Outlook does contain buttons you can select to report it. So the technology is going in the right way here, where since email is the top attack vector by far. So if we have good methods for training people and also being able to report back on insurance, not only are you doing the training, but here's how many people we have clicking. Insurance is going to be more scrutinized over the course of time, only because ransomware is happening so frequently and premiums are going up and whatnot. So the level of detail we're going to have to provide, especially like in the training, is going to become more intense every year.
We did get a response back. Someone didn't understand the idea of rewarding for the phishing. So I can mention quickly what we did, and then maybe you can describe it better. So what we did is, as people would click and say, okay, I'm going to report this as a phishing email, if it was one that the company generated, our name was going essentially into a hat. And all the people whose names got in the hat, and I think you get multiple entries if you clicked on multiple phishing emails, then a drawing was done, and the reward was someone got like a gift card in this case. You may know of other rewards or a better way to describe rewarding that behavior.
No, I think that's well put.
Okay.
So yeah, Tom, if you punch in 12 phishing emails and didn't click on any of them, hopefully you get 12 little Tom names in the hat.
Yeah, right. And if I choose to ignore them and not click on them, I don't get any reward. I guess I don't get dinged because I didn't click on them, but that does sort of have people saying, let me go ahead and report these things, and showing that I'm actively looking for them.
Yes, good incentive. And now you've started something, and don't ever stop that. As more phishing emails come through. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
You mentioned the polling question related to this kind of around training. So I can share the results because we did all 3 polling questions at one time. So we said, what level of protection is in place? So we had 25% saying they don't know. 13% said the next level, I've got some technology in place, but no specific program. People are on their own. The next one is, I do have some in place and some training awareness, and that was 35%. And then 30%, which surprised me a little bit, is a formal training procedures and training in place. Nice. So more than half the people have some technology and some training in place. But like I said, 25% don't know.
That's excellent. That number's climbing, because I believe it was 2021 kind of, survey went out to the masses, and it was only 20%. So I figured in the back of my mind for 2022, it was somewhere between 30 and 50. And that would line up right with our group here. So we're in good shape.
Okay. And I'll make one other comment. So 45% of our attendees there are in a company larger than 50 people. Maybe that's where there's a little bit more training, but we've still got quite a few. 40% are less than 10 people. So if some of those, I assume some of those are ones with formal training and things, that seems really good for a 10-person organization.
Agree. Yeah, one ransomware, especially for smaller organizations, one ransomware attack coming, email vector. Some organizations don't come back from that, unfortunately. So
Sure.
this, and since it's the top of attack vector, it's a huge deal.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I'm going to pick on email just a bit further. So surprisingly, I think there are still some organizations out there that are using like an in-house mail server. And the Department of Homeland Security, they released a statement. They weren't saying don't use an in-house mail server, but they're like, hey, evaluate whether this is the best option for your company. And the reason being is that these are very hard to protect anymore. So if you have a mail server that's in-house, there's lots of vulnerabilities coming out about these that we have to stay on top of constantly. Some of them are hard to patch. So Office 365 has kind of made this transition for people to where it's easy to set up multi-factor authentication on it. It's easy to set up locking out accounts. It's got a ton more security features than we have, and facilitating our own email server. So I encourage everyone to have a professional, preferably a Microsoft certified professional, do Office 365 services. And then that third bullet there, like legacy authentication, things like that are the little pieces that are the difference between, your IT guy, perhaps your in-house IT person. If they don't have a lot of experience or don't know all the little check boxes to check, then okay, let's evaluate having a certified Microsoft engineer to set up our mail configuration or move our mailboxes, to Office 365. And what legacy, why I pick on legacy authentication is if you have a person in your organization using like an iPhone 5 and they're just persistent that I need company email on this iPhone 5, it can't communicate with Office 365 without there being a little security hole that hackers can go right around. And so if it's company wide, don't let legacy authentication happen. It might even be called basic. I can't remember now. I think they might have changed that. But the point is don't allow old methods of connecting to a mail server. Also, disable anonymous calendar sharing. There's something that came out about this on June 10th. I need to read a little bit further, but basically allowing organizations outside of your own to be able to see calendars.
Oh, okay. Would Calendly be similar to that, or you're saying this is within Office, within OS 365 to just let other people? Okay.
If you're allowing a vendor or third party, you're up to their terms of agreement, their terms and agreements and all that. But yes, you would have to, if you have something bolted to your company email, it have to be at your discretion. Okay, got it. And since email is a top attack vector, going through it more, spam filter is important. Multi-factor authentication, clearly important. Multi-factor authentication kind of, for organizations that aren't doing it yet, puzzle me. Sorry if I insult anyone. But for, you personally, having it turned on Facebook, LinkedIn, your personal email, all of those are so important to have it turned on so your information is not compromised, including, company email. So if you can turn on multi-factor authentication on everything, we're at a point in time where it needs to be turned on. Also, one safety net is tagging on external emails. So if I send from my Gmail account an email to the company email, it's going to have a little external tag on there that says, this person is from outside the organization. Be careful. Were you expecting, an email from them? Were you expecting attachment from them? Does this email look normal because it came from somebody outside the organization? Those types of triggers in your mind may pop up if you see that tag that says external email. That needs to be set up on organizational emails. Also, this is a big one, disable forwarding rules. So it's kind of a data loss protection methodology. We do not want organizational emails to have a rule in your Outlook that says I can forward to a Gmail account. Hackers do this sometimes if they have a business email compromise, which is the most common attack. But disallowing this in a company policy to prevent any information going outbound is a good practice. And these last two are good for not getting spoofed and also receiving emails from verified organizations. And again, a Microsoft certified professional. I don't know how many we have on staff here at Anders, but there's a couple that are really, really good at these two pieces. And we ask them to set them up on, all of our clients who are using Office 365. If we bring in a customer that doesn't have this set up, it's one of the things that we have to do just to be safe.
So as you're talking email, I did just get one question for that, Jason. So Ben's asking, any thoughts on Google Workspace versus Microsoft for business email in terms of security?
Some organizations use both of them, I've seen organizations use both, is what I'm trying to say. But as long as you're kind of following the same security principles where, spam filter applied and the policy set up within both of them, the same, I would say, parameters that I went through, in the bullets apply to Gmail is the way I would address it. We only do Microsoft at Anders, so I'm more familiar with that. But if there was a mirror or a path between policy, those are what I would focus on for an organization using Gmail.
So the way I hear that, and tell me if I got this right, no real inherent difference that you're aware of between the two, but could be a huge difference in how you choose to implement policies and filters and things like that, that you could probably easily implement either of them in a very unsafe way and careless. Is that
well, from a very high level, I would say there are some significant differences between the two platforms. I think the market has adopted, organizations have adopted one more so than the other. I think someone should evaluate the security parameters, the checkboxes that are available in both platforms to see if they fit the organization from a security perspective. That's the way I would answer that. Unfortunately, if you're already using, the Gmail platform or G Suite platform, then you may already be too far down the road. But just still at that point, establishing adequate security parameters, if that's what works for your organization, then that would be my recommendation.
Okay, good.
All right. Perfect. So a lot of times whenever I'm doing like a cybersecurity audit, part of that's like, hey, have you recently had a penetration test to see if hacker could get in the organization? And I've seen some really, really bad ones, and then I've seen some decent ones, and I've seen some good ones. So the good ones include like this glorious executive summary that has something that's very easy to read. If I've never seen the environment before, that I can kind of understand what's going on, what was tested, and you can hand it to the leadership and they can read it and understand it. It's explained, the areas where there may be vulnerabilities and risks, and it's provided, what if this vulnerability was exercised, found out by a hacker and something bad happened, what happens? And then also provides a path, to fixing all the things that are broken. And the best companies figure out how to put this in good words and are precise, and it's not a ton of paper. I'd say the awful penetration tests are a list of 400 computers and all of the vulnerabilities on each one of them, and slapped on somebody's desk, because that makes people like me have to go through and decipher those 400 pages to produce these 4 bullet points. Those are terrible. So they're not all created equal. Unfortunately, penetration tests are kind of expensive. I think if you Google it right now, the minimum might say it's $8,000 to $12,000 to have one of these performed. Okay. So if you ask for a redacted report from another organization, perhaps you'd look at it and grab what components of it that are very valuable to you, to make sure it's like, hey, if we have this done, then this is the information we're going to get out of this, and that would be appealing to us.
Okay. What about your thought? I would assume that when people think about doing this kind of initiative, penetration test probably looks popular. It feels like an action that I'm taking. Do you feel like a lot of people want to do that sort of in isolation? That's kind of my strategy. Can someone get in from the outside and that's sort of all I choose to do? Has that been your experience with prospective clients?
Some clients, I'll try to answer this best I can here. Some clients, I would say, choose to do a penetration test annually, and without the practice of all the things that kind of go on in the background, like set up your firewall to where it doesn't get hacked easily. Turn off, if you're using an old school way of transmitting files from organization to organization using like file transfer protocol or FTP or one of those methodologies that someone may recognize, then a hacker is going to get into that pretty easily. Let's make that change now and block it on the firewall, and then your pen test will have more value. Same with products and services. If you're using the appropriate products and services, then you're somewhat more adequately prepared for performing a penetration test. If you know you already have holes in the environment that need to be repaired, get those shored up as much as possible, then perform the penetration test. But don't lean on it wholly 100% that, all right, my penetration test came back good, and my persistence at cybersecurity stops. That is not my message. Cybersecurity is persistence, 100%. I listen to a podcast every single morning on business days that tells me threat intelligence over and over again, so I know what to apply on a daily basis. So it would be completely wrong of me to say that organization had a penetration test on May 30th and they don't have to get another one for another year. Tons of changes happen in environments, and new threats come out all the time, and some of them may pop up. Something may pop up in the middle where another penetration test may be warranted, but obviously has to be budgeted and everything for next go around. So we are persistent with our cybersecurity initiatives year round, not just a penetration test time.
Okay, that's really helpful.
All right, perfect. The next one that I have is a network assessment. So I talked about inventory for quite a while. It's such a big deal. But if you have a network assessment performed, I think the majority of technology service providers use this one very specific software. It's called Network Detective, and they will execute a report for you. I've looked for all kinds of different softwares to perform this, but the majority of the time it's this one software that most TSPs are using. And fortunately, one of the functions of this is it's going to produce a report that has an inventory of all the things kind of connected to the network. And if you have a large organization, it's going to find a lot of things. If you're a smaller organization, the report's going to be less paper. It does produce a security report and a network assessment. It's not a penetration test, but it does produce great information regarding the detail of the inventory. And also, I think the better executive summaries are an IT professional gathering all the reports that's generated by a software-based scan. Interviews with employees are great, or with IT leadership, and also an on-site review of equipment to help produce a great executive summary. Those are like the best. But the detailed report and security assessment, those can be produced right out of the software. But I think the human element is the part that produces the greatest executive summary. And I usually like to keep those to 1 to 2, maybe 3 pages. So if you can get a promise from a technology service provider that is what they will share with you at the conclusion of an assessment, you did a great job.
Okay.
Any more questions there?
No, we do not have other questions that are in here.
Perfect. Okay. Here's my contact information. I think that's the stage I'm at here. If anybody would like to record that, they can.
Yeah, and people will get the slides tomorrow, so if they want to reach out to you. Yeah, and so you're working with clients. So if we should have CPAs on here with clients who may need to have this kind of expertise. I think this is a great overview. But of course, you have people saying, hey, where would I start? How could I start with assessment and things like that? So Jason, you'd be one of the key people to help people with that or help their clients for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I recently gave a presentation for the Missouri Society of CPAs, and I had a few CPAs knocking on my door right afterwards. I'm glad to help.
Sure. We did get one last question. I think we may have answered this earlier, but what's the best way to protect your data using a plane's Wi-Fi if you're on an airplane? So VPN, I assume, would be an example. Nord VPN is the tool that I've used on mine. There are commercial ones available that aren't very expensive. Would that be your recommendation? Is you have a VPN and that's how you protect yourself?
Same thing applies. I understand. Yeah, if you're on an airplane, you may be
you can't use your hotspot, right? Yeah.
Whenever I'm exploring different VPN services like Nord or Express, I think a couple of the important things that I'm fed on threat intelligence feeds and my own research is I'm looking to see where the company is based out of, the country, who it's owned by, and keep going down that path to gather more information. Because just because somebody claims they're not sharing information doesn't mean they're telling the truth. So if they're sharing, particular information, I'm looking for as much proof as I possibly can get about that organization before I sign up for a subscription or I use them as a VPN provider. But I will tell you to date, I get on airplanes sometimes and have to travel, and I just avoid using the Wi-Fi because I'm probably paranoid because I see so much bad stuff on a daily basis. Okay. But I don't even use it on a plane, unfortunately.
Okay. Your advice is disconnect. Use that time to be disconnected. That can be a good thing.
I disconnect. Yes, sir.
That's great. Well, Jason, thank you very much. I do have a couple things to share with our audience here. If you want to jump to the next slide. Sure. As we close out here. So if you want to keep learning, so I love that people are here to learn. I know people are also just getting their CPE credit. We have the Modern CPA Success Show, and you can find that on YouTube. So that's a place where we talk to employees, we talk to clients, we talk to leading experts in a really nice short environment. So that can be a really good tool for some people. If we continue on, then we also have a CFO community. So on Slack, many people are familiar with Slack. You can join this community. We've got a free month if you want to experience what that's like. But a chance for CPAs to interact with each other, ask questions, get advice. There's a marketing channel, there's a book club channel, there's other ones that people can have, and it's fairly active. So we would really encourage people to do that. If you're really interested in CFO services, we have an entire course. So the playbook for how we deliver virtual CFO services, how to land $60,000 per year clients. You can see some of the information in there. This is an intensive course, 15 different modules. As you complete it, we do have a free coaching session with me and one of our founders, Adam, to talk through if you're trying this transition to offer CFO services to try to help you do that. You do get a free subscription to Slack community. And then also we have a weekly 1-hour meeting. We call it the Fireside Chat, but people call in and we're answering questions and discussing how people are marketing to people, how they're delivering the services, how they're hiring, and all those things that are in there. And I think our final slide, if I'm not mistaken here, is if you're saying, this all sounds cool, I don't want to learn, I just want to join you guys, we are hiring. So if you look at our summit site, you can see what roles we're hiring for, and we'd love to talk to people and see if people want to join our organization. So thanks everyone very much for participating today. Jason, thank you. This is really good information for us. Really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.